Hey guys, Andrew Shrout. I'm here in the sideboard with Select Side Rider AJ Kerrigan. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, thanks.
You have shown up with a spicy number.
I like to call it that, yeah.
You are playing Blue, White, Red Heroic, I suppose, for lack of a better term. Tell me a little about what this deck does and why you chose to play it.
So essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to play creatures with Heroic and spells that target them and ways to consistently target them and ways to protect them through removal spells and through wrath effects. And you're just similar to a hexproof deck trying to create a really big creature or a bunch of very powerful creatures and just get your opponent from 20 to 0 as quickly as possible. The deck's a lot of fun, first of all, which is one of the big reasons I was drawn to it. Okay. It has a very combo feel, which is something I'm akin to.
Sure.
And it's also very good against a lot of the decks people are playing. It's very good against decks that are trying to wait till turn 4 to start interacting with you.
I got you. So you're trying to get under the bigger threats in Standard and just punish people quickly?
Yep.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit about your creature base. So you said that you have a lot of heroic creatures, and you do. You have 4 Favored Hoplite, 4 Laguna Band Trailblazer, 4 Crow and Skyguard, and 3 Phalanx Leaders. So kind of
those are just the core, the best heroic creatures that we found through testing.
The standard, the white heroic guys. And then there's a different style of creature here. You're playing 4 Niv-Magus Elemental. Yeah,
so Niv-Magus Elemental is not great on his own all the time. You can still start exiling spells and he gets big really quickly. Where he really shines is with another heroic creature. You can start casting spells targeting the heroic creature to make them bigger and then exile them to Niv-Magus Elemental. And quickly you find yourself with a heroic creature that's big and you Niv-Magus Elemental that's even bigger.
Okay. Yeah, of course, when you target a creature with the heroic ability, the heroic trigger doesn't care if the spell actually resolves. So you actually get to grow 2 creatures for the price of 1 spell.
Some of your spells you don't even want to resolve. You just want to exile them to Niv-Magus Elemental.
Fair enough. Now you have some kind of the standard target this to protect it. Kind of you have 4 God's Willing, 4 Johnny's Presence. So that kind of protects your battleship there. The package of spells that I really want to focus on here, the spells that work best with Niv-Magus Elemental, I suppose. You have 4 Hidden Strings and 4 Trait Doctoring.
Yeah, so Trait Doctoring I'll start with. It's just a solid, it's the next best one after Hidden Strings. It costs a single blue, targets a guy, and you can Cypher. And it's just a consistent way to start getting counters on your guy every turn. And for the most part, the text is relevant. You can make Chain to Rocks fall off is something you do a lot in the burn matchup. You can chain some protections on Blood Baron, so it no longer has protection from white when your guys get bigger than Blood Baron.
Sure.
But what you're really trying to do is cast it, Cypher it, and then every time target a heroic guy and exile with Niv-Magus Elemental. Because when you exile the Cypher copy, it's still ciphered on the creature for next time.
Sure. Yeah, so every time you deal damage with a creature that has a spell ciphered onto it, it puts another spell on the stack, which has a target, so that triggers heroic, and which can be then eaten with Niv-Magus Elemental.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest ways you grow Niv-Magus Elemental really quickly over the course of a couple turns.
Sure. Okay, so Trait Doctoring here is like, you turn to Trait Doctoring basically because it lets you target something.
Yeah.
If the card literally just said target creature.
Yeah, it would be almost as good.
Okay.
Then the Hidden Strings is where the deck really comes together. It's similar to Trait Doctoring, and a lot of times you're just trying to target guys. It's really good because it can target 2 guys, and then exile the copies to Niv-Magus Elemental. You can start to get really interesting interactions with things like Phalanx Leader, or you can start untapping lands. So some of the most broken draws involve a turn 1 guy, turn 2 Hidden Strings, untap both lands, then play like a Trait Doctoring and a Niv-Magus Elemental, and really quickly out of the gates putting like 10, 12 power in play on the 2nd and 3rd turn. It's also just a really good way to get blockers out of the way if you already have Cypher spells on and you just need a new way to connect.
Sure.
And it just does literally everything the deck wants. Sometimes you can even fix your mana with it. It does some pretty interesting things.
Because of the untappy combo-ish nature there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just feels like you're playing a combo deck when you cast that card.
Makes sense. So in addition to your core, your 4 of heroic triggering spells, you've got a little bit of spice here. There's a 1 of Bioshift, a 1 of Triton Tactics, a 1 of Mizium Skin, and a 2 of Launch the Fleet.
Yeah, so Mizium Skin's just another protection spell. We started to focus a little more on Esper and Mono Black game 1, so we wanted a 9th protection spell. Okay. It's actually helped a lot. It can get you through like Anger of the Gods too with the Overload. If your guys are all like 2/3s, you can make them 2/4s. Triton Tactics is really good against aggro. 1, it just targets 2 guys, and against like aggro decks and monsters decks, you just can eat their creatures without them expecting it. And when you just don't have a Cypher spell, it's a good way to get counters on 2 guys if you just need to start dealing more than 1 damage at a time. And then the same thing with Bioshift. Sometimes you're just sitting with protection spells and you need a way to start getting damage on the board. And Bioshift with things like Phalanx Leader and Niv-Magus Elemental can really start to move counters around and start to turn a 2-power board into like a 6-power board.
Sure.
And then the Launch the Fleet is a new addition. We added it about 2 days ago with a little bit of testing.
Okay.
It's really good in that you can target multiple guys with it. So if you're sitting in some matchups, you just want to play as many guys as possible. And it allows you to target all of them, get counters on them. And sometimes if the 1/1s aren't going to matter, you can exile it to Niv-Magus Elemental.
Okay.
a lot of times what you're doing though is you're playing a guy on turn 1 and then launch the fleets on turn 2. You get the heroic and you get a 1/1, and the 1/1's really good against things like Devourer Flesh and Desecration Demon.
Okay.
And in a pinch, it can also be another thing to cipher onto to diversify your threats.
Oh, sure. All right.
So it's just a strong card. It was really unexpected. We were only playing it in other versions of the deck, and then we started to see that it was just a good card on its own.
All right. The other spell that I want to focus on here, this is a blue-white-red deck, but there's actually only one red card. You're playing Boros Charm.
Yes.
This is a card you decided was worth splashing for.
Yeah, so we tested around with a couple different splashes. Originally we just had blue-white because the mana is obviously a lot better in blue-white, but we found Boros Charm is just insane. For the most part, you want your protection spells to cost 1 if they're not doing much other relevant stuff, but Boros Charm is so multi-purpose. It's really good reach late in the game. A lot of times you're an aggressive deck, but you run out of ways to tap down their guys and they create a wall that you just can't get through.
Okay.
But you get them to like 4 or 8 and Boros Charms can finish off the job. It's also good, another way to indestructible against protection spells and against Supreme Verdict, or against removal spells in Supreme Verdict. And then its most important aspect, or the one at least you use it most for, is Double Strike.
Sure.
You can get numerous turn 3 kills with Boros Charm. Like end of turn, pump up my guy a little bit, untap Boros Charm, because it'll trigger Heroic, and then with something like a Krone Skyguard that's naturally evasive, you can just deal like 12 damage on turn 3. Because you'll make a big guy, and Double Strike works well with big guys.
Sounds good. Okay, you mentioned at the start there that you thought that this deck was really well positioned right now. What are you hoping to play against with this deck?
Yeah, so a lot of what you're trying to play against is decks that are waiting to interact with you. So decks that are waiting till turn 3, or sometimes you need to win the die roll, but they're trying to play Hero's Downfall and Supreme Verdict to get rid of your creatures, and then you can start doing things like a Johnny's Presence and Goblin to protect. It's also good against some of the slower aggro decks, like the green-white versions, because your creatures just get so much bigger than theirs, and you're a faster deck.
Sure.
The decks that are, again, just trying to dirtle around and not do anything relevant are the decks you really want to play against.
Okay. What are you hoping to avoid then?
The biggest one is mono blue. One, you don't have any way to really get through their creatures game on, and they can create flyers, they create a large amount of blockers, and they have a really good clock, and a lot of the lists now are playing a lot of removal, like cheap removal, like a rapid hybridization, which is not good, because to play around that you have to hold up 1 mana as soon as possible, because their spell only costs 1 mana. Another matchup that's not great, it's like 50-50 in testing so far, is Burn. Searing Blood is a house sometimes, if you just play a guy and then they get to kill it and deal you 3. And racing them is not easy. The average draw is a turn 4, turn 5 draw, if they're not interacting with you, and you constantly have to play around them just burning your creature instead of your face.
Right.
But if you start to get things out like Laguna Band Trailblazer that they just can't easily kill with burn spells, and you feel safe and you know you can go in on a creature, it's very easy to race them.
Okay. So Laguna Band Trailblazer, the key card in that probably. All right. So we just finished round 3, and you're sitting at 2-1.
Yeah.
So you're still live here. I'll be rooting for you.
Thanks.
Thanks for sitting down with me, man.
Yep.
Stick around. We've got plenty more coverage coming of the Standard Open here in New Jersey.